All right, get ready to dive deep, because today we're tackling something pretty fascinating: why behaviors actually change.
Oh, it's a good one.
We're dissecting Chapter 7 from Cooper's book, all about methods in applied behavior analysis.
Yeah.
And trust me, this is way more than just a boring textbook lecture. This is about those aha moments.
Absolutely.
You gave us this chapter on analyzing behavior change, and we're really going beyond just like seeing those changes to understanding how they really happen.
Right. And what's really cool about applied behavior analysis is that it hones in on these functional relationships. So there's connections between like our behavior and our environment.
Okay.
Because it's not enough to just see like, oh, there's a change. We want to know why that happened.
So let's say we're seeing someone making different choices. Like maybe a student's grades are all of a sudden amazing.
Right.
Or someone is sticking to like a new workout routine like it's nothing.
Right.
Most people would be like, wow, amazing, it's working.
Yeah.
But behavior analysis takes it a step further.
It does. It's like being a detective, right? We're looking for these really subtle environmental cues or even changes
Okay.
that are directly influencing that shift in behavior.
Okay.
So did that student find like an awesome study buddy?
Yeah.
Did that person who's now going to the gym all the time, did they join like a supportive fitness community? Uncovering those functional relationships is what really gives us the power to make a change that lasts.
It reminds me of those before and after photos.
Yes.
The after might look really impressive.
Right.
But if you don't know the how they got there, it's just a snapshot, right? You need the whole story.
Precisely. We're not making assumptions here. We are uncovering those hidden connections.
I see that Cooper calls this out as experimental control being like the key thing here.
It is.
So are we talking about running like a science experiment, but instead of like beakers and all that stuff, it's real life behavior?
Exactly. So we identify the dependent variable. That's the behavior we want to change. Like let's say how many assignments somebody's completing each week. And then our independent variable, that's our intervention, the thing that we are manipulating.
Yeah.
So for example, introducing a daily planner.
So to be clear, we're talking about one individual, not like lumping everyone into a big group, right?
Yes.
Which is really different than I think how people usually think about this.
It is. And that's because behavior is truly an individual phenomenon.
Yeah.
So like each person, they're their own universe.
Yeah.
Have a unique history, environmental influences.
Right.
What works for one person may not work for another, which is why taking those group averages super misleading.
It's like trying to figure out how a new coaching strategy impacts a team.
Yes.
But you're just looking at whether they win or lose.
Yeah.
You would totally miss how each player responded.
Exactly. And single case research designs, these are used a lot in applied behavior analysis.
Yeah.
And this is where each individual is actually their own control. So we're looking for those patterns and changes within their own behavior under different conditions.
Okay, I'm with you. This highlights how powerful those personalized approaches can be. But what about those times when, like, someone's behavior is all over the place? I know I definitely have times when I'm super focused and then afternoon slump.
Yeah. And that's what's so interesting. Behavior analysis doesn't see that variability as a bad thing, as something to just like dismiss.
Yeah.
It's actually a really important clue.
Wait, so you're telling me that my like inconsistent focus is trying to tell me something? I knew there was a reason I wanted those cookies at like 3 p.m.
Well, I don't know about those cookie cravings just yet, but you've hit on a really important point.
Okay.
And that's that this approach works on the assumption that behavior isn't random.
Okay.
There are identifiable causes.
Okay.
So instead of dismissing variability, we ask what environmental factors might be causing these changes. Could it be anything from how much sleep you got to like how stressed out you are to even just the time of day, like you mentioned, with those afternoon energy dips.
So you're saying my after-lunch productivity crash isn't just me being totally dependent on caffeine?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
But you've hit on a crucial part of this approach. It's about knowing that behavior isn't random. It has identifiable causes. And by like really carefully controlling and then manipulating those variables, that's how we begin to uncover those causes, and we can actually understand the why behind what's happening.
That reminds me of a time I tried this new time management thing that everyone was talking about, and I swear it was working great. I was like a machine.
Yeah.
But then, life got crazy. I totally fell off. Looking back, I honestly don't know if it was that technique or just a less crazy week, right?
Yeah, and that's such a good example because it really highlights why just noticing a change isn't enough.
Right.
We need a way more systematic way to figure out if like an intervention is actually effective. Which brings us to this idea of baseline logic and what's called a steady state strategy.
All right, let's break down those game-changing principles. I am really interested in this whole baseline logic idea.
Yeah.
I can already tell it's pretty central here.
Yeah, it is. So think of this steady state strategy as like laying the groundwork for a really solid experiment.
Okay.
Before we even think about making any changes, we want to be able to see a stable, predictable pattern in that behavior.
Okay.
That's our baseline. It's like our starting line.
So we're talking about taking those initial measurements.
Yeah.
Like how often is this behavior happening? How long does it last? You're really getting to know its natural rhythm.
Exactly. We're going to gather enough data points
Mm-hmm.
that we can actually predict what would happen if we just let things keep going naturally.
Okay.
No intervention. Imagine, like, charting the course of a ship before you change its direction.
Okay.
That's our baseline.
But wouldn't that take, like, forever to establish a stable baseline? Because life is not exactly a controlled lab setting, right?
Right.
Like, you've got deadlines popping up. Your friends decide to visit all these curveballs.
Oh, absolutely. And you're so right. It's a real balancing act.
Yeah.
But the more stable that baseline, the more confident we can be that when we see a change later,
Right.
it's because of that intervention that we put in place, not just life happening, right?
Okay, I'm with you on that. Solid starting point is key. But Cooper also talks about these other baseline patterns, like ascending, descending, variable. So what if it's not perfectly steady right away? Like, what if our ship is already kind of veering off course a little bit?
That's a great question. And, it's actually more common than you might think to see those other patterns pop up.
Okay.
So an ascending baseline means that the behavior is already improving all on its own.
Okay.
Maybe that student, they just naturally start to find their steady groove as the semester goes on.
Yeah.
A descending baseline means, unfortunately, it's headed in the other direction.
Okay.
So maybe, like, all those after-school commitments are cutting into homework time.
So let's say you're working with a student and they're really struggling with deadlines, but then you're watching them and their productivity is actually getting better on its own during those initial observations. What do? Just, like, ride that wave? Hope for the best.
That's where the applied behavior analysis comes in, right?
Okay.
Because we always had to be thinking about what the individual needs,
Right.
what the context is. And if that behavior is already moving in a positive direction,
Yeah.
we might actually hold off on doing that intervention right away.
Yeah.
Just keep watching it, keep collecting data, and see if the positive trend sticks around.
Right. No need to fix what isn't broken.
Right.
But if it's like those deadlines are getting closer and those assignments are piling up, you wouldn't just sit there, would you?
Definitely not.
Mm.
If that behavior is going in the wrong direction,
Right.
that's like a huge
Ah.
signal to jump in and do something. We want to try and change that. Right?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So it's all about making those judgment calls based on what the data is telling you. But then there's the wild card, that variable baseline.
Yeah.
I feel like that's me. A little bit, lots of peaks and valleys, unexpected detours,
Yeah. Variable baselines, they can definitely be tricky,
Yeah.
but they can also be super valuable.
Okay.
They're like a giant flashing sign,
Okay.
telling us there are these factors that are
Yeah.
impacting behavior that maybe we haven't identified yet or we haven't controlled for.
Okay.
That means we got to dig a little deeper.
So back to the drawing board. We got to figure out what those hidden influences are. Like you said, it's like detective work.
It is. It's like we start asking even more questions. Is there a connection to what time of day it is? Are there certain activities? What are their social interactions like? Even that afternoon energy crash that you mentioned.
Right.
A variable baseline is really pushing us to investigate more, to uncover all those subtle influences we don't always see.
Okay, so let's imagine we've successfully navigated those tricky baseline waters. We've got our solid starting point, right?
Yeah.
We've accounted for all those existing trends.
Right.
We're finally ready to actually introduce the intervention, our independent variable.
Yeah.
What happens next? How do we know that it's actually making a difference and it's not just a coincidence?
That is where we really put that logic in baseline logic to work, right?
Okay.
And so we lean on these three key principles that Cooper talks about: prediction, verification, and replication.
Prediction, verification, and replication. All right, let's break them down one by one, starting with prediction. That one sounds pretty straightforward. Are we just going with our gut here?
It's actually a lot more systematic than that.
Okay.
Based on that nice, stable baseline we established,
Right.
we're going to predict what we think the data will look like if we didn't do anything.
Okay.
We see a big change once that intervention's in place. That's a pretty good sign that maybe, just maybe, our intervention's doing something.
So it's like saying, okay, based on what we've seen so far, I predict this student is going to keep struggling to meet those deadlines unless we try, like a daily planner or something. And if they suddenly become a deadline master after they start using that planner, well, that's a good sign that the planner deserves at least some of the credit.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, and this is important, correlation does not equal causation.
Of course.
We can't just, declare victory based on that initial change.
Right.
To be more confident, we got to verify that that change is really, truly because of what we did and not just something else that we missed.
And that is where verification comes in.
Yes.
Back to the detective work.
You got it. So we go back to our baseline. We essentially hit pause on our intervention. So we stop using the planner, for example.
Okay.
If that behavior goes back to how it was before, those deadlines are getting missed again.
Right.
That really supports the idea that our intervention was working.
It's like that part in a mystery movie when they take the suspect out of the lineup and suddenly everything points in a different direction.
Yeah.
It was the planner the whole time. But I'm sensing one more piece to this puzzle here, right? Replication. Why not just stop at verification? Isn't that enough to prove the point?
Great question. Verification, that's a big step for sure.
Yeah.
But that gold standard, the thing that really makes a finding convincing, especially when we're talking about human behavior, is replication.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So we're not just doing this whole thing once, we're repeating it, right?
Yeah.
We're introducing that planner, we're taking it away, and then we're bringing it back. And this whole time, we're watching those deadlines like a hawk. You're blowing my mind here. We're talking about a full-on behavioral roller coaster. Planner, no planner, planner.
Right.
In the name of science, right?
Yes.
But why is the replication part so important? I have to admit, it does seem a little repetitive.
I totally get where you're coming from, but think of it like this. Every time that we repeat that process, every time we see that success, with deadlines come back when they use the planner,
Yeah.
we're making that connection stronger, that functional relationship, collecting those really solid pieces of evidence, right?
Right.
That tie the suspect to the scene.
Okay. I'm seeing the beauty of the repetition here.
Yeah.
It's not about just doing the same thing over and over again. It's about building that rock-solid case. So the more we see the same behavior change after we bring in the planner, the more confident we can be that it's actually the planner that's making the difference, not something else we're missing.
Yes, exactly. Replication makes the findings really believable. And it's the foundation for those evidence-based behavior change techniques that everybody wants, right?
Right.
It's how we move from those random success stories to something that's actually going to make a difference.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I've been going through life, noticing behavior change, but not really getting it, you know?
Right.
Like I was just watching the trailer and not the actual movie.
That's the exciting part. When you understand the why,
Yeah.
not just the what, when you uncover those functional relationships,
Yeah.
you're really unlocking that ability to create change that's meaningful and that's going to last. And the best part is, it doesn't just have to be about other people.
Yeah.
This is about you too, right?
Right.
This is about all of us having these aha moments about our own lives.
So the next time I see someone's behavior change, or even when I feel like my focus is totally crashing, I shouldn't just accept it, right?
Right.
There's a whole world of environmental things going on that we can figure out.
Yeah.
So like those secret messages in video games, you just got to know where to look.
Exactly. Exactly. Challenge yourself to think a little deeper than those obvious explanations.
Yeah.
And the next time you notice a change, just ask yourself, what factors could be playing a role here?
Right.
How could I test that? You'll be surprised what connections you find.
This deep dive has given us the tools to do that, to move beyond just observing to actually understanding what's really going on.
Yeah.
There's fascinating forces behind it all, right?
Yes, it is fascinating.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those questions coming and let's keep exploring that amazing world of behavior.